Hey guys, what's up and welcome. Today we're going to be checking out 3 videos about Apple. If you didn't know, Apple has earnings tomorrow. Also, the Fed speaks tomorrow. That will be November 1st. We have Gene Munster saying Apple has a China problem when it comes to phone sales. We also have them saying revenue is everything right now for Apple. And we also are going to be taking a look at Apple's new lineup of chips will set the stage for the future and Mac. So we've got a lot of things going on with Apple, guys. Apple is the biggest stock in the stock market, going to be reporting earnings tomorrow, so it's definitely a big day. Hopefully this will shed some light, help you make some good decisions if you plan on putting some money to work beforehand. As always, guys, if you like these videos, smash that like button for me, and let's jump into them.
Another big story that'll play out tomorrow. We're about a half an hour away from what Apple's calling a scary fast product event. How big of a splash, if at all, could it make tonight? Steve Kovac has the details on what we might expect. And like everything, Steve, it's crowded in Apple mystery.
That's right. Yeah. Well, Apple's getting spooky tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern, hosting a virtual event. They're calling it Scary Fast. Get it? Because it's almost Halloween. We're expecting it to unveil a new Mac lineup for the holidays. And knowing those Apple execs, more than a few Halloween jokes and puns. But the computers will be the same. That's the iMac desktop and MacBook Pro laptop. The real story is going to be the reveal of Apple's newest processor for those computers. They're going to call it the M3. It's the third version of the chip Apple started making itself a few years ago because Intel's chips were no longer cutting it. Expect to see a lot of what us nerds call speeds and feeds, or showing how the performance of the new chip stacks up to the competition. And that competition is going to get a lot tougher. Qualcomm, now that's the company best known for making smartphone chips, just unveiled its first PC processor last week. And it says that chip is faster than Apple's. Of course, that might change after tonight. And NVIDIA is reportedly working on its own PC chips as well. All 3 companies are using chip designs from ARM Holdings, which just had its public debut this fall. Could be on the cusp of a new era in PCs, Brian, that are much more efficient than what Intel already offers, Brian.
There you go. Steve Kovac, good luck tonight. We'll see you tomorrow. All right.
Thanks.
Will tonight's event be enough to excite investors? Let's take it to your next guest. Joining us now is Deepwater Asset Management Managing Partner Gene Munster. Gene, the Mac, it's a great computer. Does it matter at all to Apple's stock price?
Before he answers, I'm definitely interested to hear. It definitely matters to their stock price. The Mac has been lagging and lagging pretty bad. We need that margin to come back up. We needed to start having more sales and more consistent sales. That's one of Apple's only laggers when it comes to their products. And if we can get that gap coming back up and more sales starting to happen in the Mac, Apple's going to start rounding out and looking pretty attractive.
Brian, it does in the sense that when you're a $430 billion company, you need every product to kind of build. They need signals to, in a baseball analogy, to create runs. And the Mac has a potential to be that. It's 10% of overall sales. It has been up and down the last couple of years. It was up 23% in 2021. Before that, in the 5 years before that, it was basically up 2% on average. So it just rocketed. And this year, fiscal 23, it's going to be down almost 30%. And so does it matter to investors? If you have 10% of your business that's down 30%, investors want to see that right size. I think what they're going to do tonight is going to be a huge step in that direction. For the December quarter, I expect it to be up, call it 5 to 7%. So they care because this has been a dive downward in terms of revenue growth over the last few quarters.
Yeah. Gene, switching.
So this is an attempt of Apple, this scary, whatever you want to call it, that's happening on Halloween. It's an event to host for the Mac so they can get more awareness, more sales, and start helping bring that business pack up and get some more traffic there.
Years talking about the phone, which certainly does matter to Apple investors. Do they have a China problem, given that apparently China, with this new Huawei phone, a lot of people in China, no surprise, are choosing the hometown favorite?
I think, yes, the simple answer is Apple does have a China problem. I think when it comes to the phone, my sense is it's going to be soft in China for the September quarter. I think that'll be offset by strength in the U.S., but China is seeing some more competition. Tim Cook, of course, had that surprise visit on October 17th to China. He did it to probably prop up the brand, which it would be a result of kind of softness. And then, of course, the China equation goes beyond just demand. There's, of course, the government's making it more difficult, Chinese government, to build products in China for Apple.
So we've got the Chinese government making it more difficult for Apple to keep building their products. And we have the Huawei phone that's stealing a whole load of customers for Apple. So what was supposed to have been a big beneficiary moving to China markets could actually end up hurting Apple in the long run. We will see. Now we're going to jump on to revenue is everything in this report. Let's go ahead and check it out.
Event tonight. It's first since introducing the iPhone 15, the virtual event, which Apple is calling Scary Fast. Kicks off at 8 p.m. Eastern. Apple is expected to unveil a new line of Macs, plus its next-generation silicon chip M3. This all comes ahead of earnings on Thursday. Joining us now is Ben Reitzes of Melius Research. He has a buy rating and a $240 price target. Ben, I guess we'll start with tonight. What do you expect to come out of this event? Is it going to be material for the stock?
It's material in the way that the Macs have been down this year about 25%, and we need them to start growing off of easier comps. So what really matters this next quarter in December is that they grow revenues, and the Macs could be an important part for that. So we'll be watching tonight to see what the features are, how quickly they're shipping, and any other bells and whistles. But Macs could be important actually in the December quarter to help them grow.
Okay. I mean, there's an expectation that we're going to get earnings results later this week, and this is a company that's going to show 4 consecutive quarters of revenue decline. How much does that matter here? How much of that is priced into the stock?
Revenues are everything right now. Every meeting I have, it's how has Apple still got this valuation with revenue declining? What they have to do for the December quarter, which is their first fiscal quarter, is guide for revenue growth year over year, reported. Currency's a little worse than when they reported last. They had an extra week in the quarter a year ago, but they got to overcome that and put up some revenue growth in order for the stock to work, in our opinion. But I don't think it has to be much. Just give us some revenue growth, and we can reaccelerate throughout the next year. That should be enough for investors.
Ben, I'll make a different sort of argument on why tonight's Apple news matters. Tell me if you agree or not. And it's the Mac has become the central vehicle for Apple's chip-driven vertical integration. I mean, this M series chip, the most powerful in its lineup, shows up first in the Mac. It ends up in the iPad. It ends up in the Vision Pro. And not only that, others are sort of copying this idea of, oh, I can take ARM-based chips, tune them to a platform and get better performance, whether you're talking in the cloud or you're talking, in the client, what AMD is trying to do, what Qualcomm is trying to do. Am I off base?
No, John. Apple's a huge silicon company. I mean, I've been very impressed with what they're doing. Not only is it really important in terms of their own innovation and standing out versus their peers. We want creatives to want these things to upgrade, but it is a showcase for what they're capable of across their whole lineup. I've been really impressed with their silicon. I think it's going to have big ramifications in their AI strategy and how they process AI at the edge. And I think that this is a really good event for them to say, hey, we have the fastest chips on the market. Look at what we've done on our own. And go from there. But I agree with you, John. I think that it is important in that regard, and they're really standing out.
And in a way,
while it is a good event to show that, hey, look at what we have the fastest chips, it also is a desperation move, guys. They're having to create a day, create hype around a product just to try to squeeze that little bit of extra revenue so that their investors are happy, because everything else is either stagnant or declining. We also have Tim Cook visiting China. Guys, that's not good. That sounds like desperation to me, especially in the midst of how this company is going down and down and down 4 quarters in a row. This is not looking good for Apple. This could be the slowing growth of Apple, or this could just be a nice staircase pattern, a nice little consolidation, and we're gonna blast off for years to come.
The rest of the PC industry is benchmarking versus Apple, maybe not the Macs, but particularly in mobility. Qualcomm even last week was talking about, here's how our new Snapdragon chip for PCs is going to perform compared to Apple.
Yeah, there's quite a few folks that potentially could get their hat in the ring. Obviously, we all know about Qualcomm because they had their big day. And then obviously the speculation around NVIDIA, AMD, working on ARM chips. It's really exciting right now, and we'll see what happens. Obviously, at the same time, Intel's innovating, and they have Meteor Lake and Arrow Lake coming. But a lot of companies are trying to use AI as a launching board to kind of increase their share in chips. Obviously, Apple's already there, and we'll see how it goes. But I do think tonight is kind of good for, the showcase of what they can do. But the key really is growing in December for this stock. It's really, and they got to talk about AI, and they're going to have to answer some questions on China as well. There's some folks very concerned about.
So that sounds like a lot of things that he's saying they need to and have to do. And if they don't, I guess that means a lot more downside, guys. It's been setting up to break a support, and if it does, it's going to be pretty ugly. And with it being the biggest stock in the market, it'll definitely pull the S&P and the Qs down. All right, lastly, we're going to check out Apple's new lineup of chips. We've already heard some about it, the M3, but he's going to go a little bit more in depth.
Unusual for Apple to have an event in the evening time. So I want to ask you, what's your big takeaway?
Well, my big takeaway, obviously, is the M3 generation of chips. This is going to set the stage for Apple's Mac line for the entire year upcoming. We've seen that they just like to disperse these chips throughout their entire lineup, and it gives us kind of a good picture of what the performance is going to be like for pretty much every Mac going forward until the next generation comes out. So it really sort of sets the stage for where Apple is heading in the next year or so with its processor architecture.
All right, so it sets the stage for Apple for the next year. I'm looking at the stock right now in the pre-market. It's in the red right now. Investors didn't seem to love it. What do you think investors are responding to?
I think probably some of it is that this might have seemed like a little bit of an underwhelming event. Obviously, it's hard to top something like the iPhone event, which happens every September and is a huge splash. The iPhone makes up a huge chunk of Apple's revenue. The Mac is a smaller part of it, and I think probably people were looking for something maybe with a little more pizzazz to it, but I think there's probably more going on here than maybe a lot of people would get just from the surface level of it.
All right, so it sounds like you weren't blown away by the scary fast theme. That didn't do it for you. So I do want to talk to you about one thing. The new lineup of maps, it really appears to be focused on professional users, musicians, artists, software designers, etc. One thing analysts like yourself, they're noting right now, they eliminated a $1,300 MacBook Air that was really popular with businesses. But again, they also lowered, the price of the MacBook Pro by $300. Give us a sense, what's the strategy there? If you have a product that people like, why eliminate that and then lower the price on the higher end version?
Yeah, I think what happened there is sort of that 13-inch MacBook Pro, which was sort of the entry level, was a holdover. It had a lot of the old technology in it. It was an old design. It had some technology like the touch bar in it that were not used by any other computer on the market. They basically had gotten rid of it in all the rest of the Mac line. So I think what they're trying to do is push people towards something that's a little more modern in the 14-inch MacBook Pro. And yeah, it does have a higher price, but the technology that's bringing with it is definitely more powerful than what came before. So it's really targeting those power users and people who want to use a high-level machine.
All right, speaking of more modern, Dan, let's talk a little bit of AI. So Apple was talking a lot about the neural engine. What does that mean for future possible AI products?
Yeah, the neural engine is a part of the Apple Silicon architecture that is specifically focused on machine learning and basically anything artificial intelligence related. And they beefed up in the M3 the power and speed of this little part of the architecture. And I think that points towards the idea that Apple realizes AI and machine learning is going to be increasingly important to them going forward. There's been a lot of talk of them doing sort of these generative AI products like a lot of the other companies on the market. But the fact that they can build the hardware specifically themselves and tune it is going to be a real potential differentiator for them.
All right, guys, a lot of interesting news on Apple. We have them having a phone problem in China. We need them to beat revenues in order to look good on earnings this quarter. And then we also have them setting a MacBook event to where they're trying to get more awareness and get that 30% negative back up to maybe positive or at least flat, so it's not a damper on the margins of the business. Guys, hopefully this M3 chip turns around and starts working for Apple. It might be their next new thing. Give them another couple years to blast off. If they can keep taking these chips and modifying them and becoming the best chip on the market, it'll give Apple another reason to keep the lead, guys. So as always, I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you learned something. Thank you all so much for 600 subscribers, guys. I can't believe it. Hope we'll get to 1,000 here pretty soon. And you guys have a great rest of your day. Peace.